Hello, everybody, and welcome to this EEX Group Nordic Power webinar. My name is Cassøe, and a sales manager covering the Nordic markets. Together with me today, I have our managing director, Tim Greenwood. And today we would like to introduce you a bit to some of the new initiatives we are launching for the Nordic power market to help boost liquidity in these markets. Before we start with the incentives, we would like to just give you a short recap of what it is we're actually offering in the Nordic market. And after that, we'll have a Q&A session where it's possible for you already now to put questions in the Q&A section of this live event. So that's basically all for introduction. I'll then leave the floor for Tim Greenwood for the initial presentation.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the EEX. As Anders said, my name's Tim, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the status of what's going on the Nordic markets with the EEX as an update, and thereafter Anders will go through some of the concrete, quite exciting initiatives and offers that we are putting forward to trading participants. Before we start, I would like to give you a quick overview of who is actually working on the Nordic markets at the EEX nowadays. So this is the core team, and these are the guys that hopefully you'll be in contact with quite a lot from now onwards. My colleague Norbert, if I can see him in the bottom right, he should be presenting today, but he's actually ill. He woke up this morning sounding a bit like Barry White. So unfortunately, I'm covering for him today. Barry White doesn't know much about Nordic power, so you have to put up with me today, unfortunately. But these are the core guys that work in the market. The EEX being a European company, we have colleagues from many different nationalities which are spread and work in different locations throughout Europe. Here we are covering everything from the sales and the business side to clearing colleagues. We also have regulatory competence on the Nordic markets here, and covering not just Europe, but a push for trading participants in the future to other regions such as Singapore, and that is why my colleague Erland, who's based in Singapore, is part of the team moving forward. The last time we spoke, we made the commitment for the EEX to also improve its presence in the Nordic countries, with a focus on establishing offices, regional offices, to get closer to trading participants. Now, getting closer to trading participants means that we are able to look after the local companies generally in the local languages as well. And here you can see the overview of the different offices that we have established. Either we've had them for a long time, a bit longer, or they are quite new to the EEX. So my colleague Anders is based in Denmark, for example, here on the list. And we've recently established 2 office spaces in Norway and Sweden, mainly focused on looking after the smaller to mid-size Norwegian and Swedish trading companies. They are generally the companies which have perhaps had not much contact with EEX before, because they're solely trading the local markets, and that is why we felt the need to actually create these office spaces here. Sweden will be giving you information hopefully very, very soon about who is going to be based in Sweden for the EEX. We have new staff which are coming on board. And also my colleague Norbert, which you saw before, he's based in Norway now for a while and is building up the desk there, where we are also looking to take on a couple of new colleagues quite soon. So these offices are operational, and if anyone, they're quite nice offices, so anyone wants to come and have a meeting with them and have a coffee, you're welcome to do so. Both are located not too far from the train stations in Oslo and in Stockholm, so you're always welcome. So now I've given you an introduction of who, a face of who's on the EEX side for the Nordic markets. We'll have a brief overview for those that don't know it too well of our offering. Core thing for the EEX to mention, first of all, the power trading is our core market. That's our core business. We're not an exchange that does other stuff, and the power we do a little bit on the side. Power is our core business, and that is why we're covering 25 European markets at the minute, plus other markets which are not on this graph, such as Japan, and we have our US exchange covering the US. But we are now market leader for all of the continental power markets, but obviously today we're focused on what our plans are for the Nordic segment. So if we can carry on to the next slide, what that actually means for the Nordic market is it is important, we feel, to bring a good basis from power, which is important for the success of being able to build and improve the Nordic market. These are certain prerequisites that we feel are completely essential to actually do that. And this starts with, first of all, the access to the trading participants. The EEX has over 400 at the minute. In theory, all of these 400 could trade Nordic power tomorrow from our side and actually start to bring some liquidity. We focused on the Nordic market for a while about the fact that liquidity is down and diminishing. And what that generally means is that the market is pulled back and is mainly traded by utility companies and especially local companies. So a lot of the core member base of the EEX, which used to trade Nordic power in the past, is no longer doing so, but they're there, they're still trading other markets. And it is essential for the development of the Nordic power that these companies start to come back and start to have the trust to regain and start to trade again. So that is our key advantage of the EEX, is the ability to reintroduce and bring back these trading companies back to the market. As I said, they're tied in with the EEX because they're trading Italy, France, Germany, Japan, US on a day-to-day basis. And there's no reason, when the roadmap is very good for Nordic power, that they are reintroduced to that market. But at the same time, we know that the importance for the Nordic market is offering a local service locally in the local language. And as I mentioned, that is why we've established these local offices. It's very important for the market you get your support of the residents, the physical companies that actually underpin that particular market and allow the more financial companies to actually enter that market. Another core advantage of the EEX is that we develop the trading with our members together. Now, we are an exchange, and this is our core business, and we integrate our members as a voice in particular working committees and the so-called exchange council, which is a formal body that represents the trading members. This is our core market, it's our core business, and these companies are our core clients, and it's very important that we build this market with the trading companies together. One other thing we are focusing on at the minute in the development is the efficient clearing side. Now, we feel this is an area which is not getting as much coverage as it should do at the moment. It's very, very difficult for an exchange to offer something to the market and to survive and to grow in the long term if it is just offering one product. It's very important for an exchange to offer a good mix of products, in this particular case, commodity, so energy commodity. And there are huge savings to be made for trading companies that trade a mix of the different power markets, CO2 markets, gas markets, for example. And we are going through each of the major trading companies individually and providing them with calculations, what it actually means to move business to the EEX or to grow open interest on the EEX. Those savings are quite substantial, and we see that as one of our core advantages of offering the Nordic market. because it's basically a lot cheaper to do so, and doing it elsewhere is less efficient. So that is what we're trying to bring to the Nordic table. If we can carry on, please, to the next one. Part of that, and also important area, is the coverage we have in the clearing bank structure. Now, with Nasdaq pulling out of the market and Nord Pool entering the market, the focus of trading for the smaller to mid-sized companies which are based in the Nordic region will change of how they access the market. A lot of them are used to so-called direct clearing. They're clearing their own business, and that market model will not exist in the future. The EEX uses a trading member model with a clearing bank model for our clearinghouse, and I believe that is also what our rival exchange is going to be offering. And that also means that this market model of the ability for companies to trade indirectly over clearing banks becomes extremely important and very, very important for the development of the market. So we see that a lot of companies that want to trade or should be trading in the future will be accessing not over memberships, but over the respective clearing banks. And that is why a coverage of these clearers is essential for building up the market and the Nordic market. And here on this slide, you can see the 31 different clearing members that we have at the moment. We are adding ones to those on I wouldn't say a daily basis, but an annual basis. We're also adding in the different regions, for example, and that is important for the development, because that gives access to a wide range of companies, from very, very small utilities to big international algo trading companies. So to carry on, we've also listed here the contract specs that we're able to trade at the EEX. These are more or less a copy and paste of the standard contract specs that you know for the system price. Just important to mention for the EEX is that we settled the market here between 3:50 p.m. and 4 p.m. for the Nordic market, which is in line with the settlement times of the Nordic market, but is different than the settlement times for continental Europe, which are a little later. And some trading members have requested to us, why don't you move the settlement times to the Nordic standard, to this time, where we can say we actually have it, that is the settlement time. So just for clarity, we are settling the Nordic market here at 3:50, and a window between 3:50 p.m. and 4 p.m, and not later like we do for the other continental markets. At this moment in time, there's no discussion on the table for any change of those particular times. So no surprises on the system price contract specs. If we can carry on, please, to the next slide. What we do have, which is quite new to trading participants, and that we're spending some time explaining at the moment, is the so-called EPAD Replicator contract that we have. We call it the replicator because it isn't an exact EPAD contract, but it replicates the financials of a EPAD. So the replicator has nothing to do with Star Trek or anything. If you're a Star Trek fan, we just like the terminology, and we try to use it to inform the market about it. And what that means is that the EEX has many different outright contracts, including the system price contracts and including the individual zones of the individual Nordic countries. So we have different zones set up for Norway, for Sweden, for Finland, and so on. And we have the ability in our trading system to offer spread order books between these different contracts. So we have spread order books which are set up between the zonal products and set up between the zonal products and the system products. And that means that any liquidity or any orders which are in those outright books are implied into these different spread order books, which we market as an EPAD replicator. So that means you can trade the price difference between the zonals and between the system price in this with one trade, and then booked in your account are two separate individual contracts. And the spread book is guaranteed. Yeah, so it's not possible to trade and just hold one of the legs if one doesn't go through. It's either your trade goes through or it doesn't go through. So you're always holding the replication of the EPAD. We feel this is very important because it allows us, where we have products which are a little less liquid, to work together with the more liquid contracts to actually bring prices into the book. So it's a good facilitation of liquidity and market development going forward. And it should facilitate the liquidity a lot better than if we were to have individual EPAD contracts listed on the exchange. So if we can carry on, please, to the next slide. As I mentioned, the combination of these different contracts is very important. We will send out thereafter these slides to the market. And on this slide here, you'll be able to see how, as a good example, we can take a system price order and have a price in one of the zones in the Norwegian market, so one of the NO3 zone, and how that actually replicates their price into the respective EPAD going forward. Obviously, the interaction of these different order books can be a little new and confusing to companies that are not used to trading a lot of the different markets at the same time. So if you want any more information in detail, please drop us a line on the contacts that you saw what I introduced first of all, and then we can go through that individually in more detail should you wish. If we can carry on as well. I briefly mentioned before these this replication of the different contracts. Now, what that means is, as I just mentioned, zonal futures. What this generally means is that the EEX has set up the system price, the price for the Nordic markets, which has been along for many years, since the late 90s, to now setting up the individual zones of the individual countries. So you could say we're offering the contracts for the individual countries in the Nordic area. Now we have all of the zones set up for Denmark, for Norway, for Sweden, and for Finland. This means we have quite a few zones set up, but if we're being honest in terms of the development, and this is our job to actually develop the liquidity in the Nordic market, we are not going to see a rapid development of liquidity in all the zones at the same rate. As is the case with EPADs at the minute, you have trading in certain zones which is more liquid than other zones, and we see this will definitely be the case with the development of the market moving forward. So in a nutshell, that means that it is important that we get the more major zones, the ones that we believe should be able to develop the liquidity moving first of all, and then that will have a knock-on effect to the more, or the smaller, the less liquid zones. Up to now, we've had around 30 companies which have traded the zonal futures. And the most active zones that we've seen in the trading are the SE3 in Sweden, DK1 and SE2. The DK1 is not a big surprise to us because that's the zone which is most aligned to our most liquid contract, the German market. But we're happy to see some activities now in the SE2 and 3 zones moving forward. And we believe these are the first three which we should see liquidity developments before they have a knock-on effect to the other markets. What we are also offering here to the market now is a so-called futures to spot service, which I can't remember if we introduced that last time or not, because it's a relatively new service to the market. With the futures being financial futures, we also have our sister exchange EPEX, which is the spot exchange for power, and they offer Nordic power on EPEX. And this allows us to use a so-called, or to offer a so-called futures to spot service, where you are able to trade the futures financially, but also to take them into physical delivery as well. So as I said, the contracts are financial, but if you wish to use the physical option and taking them into physical delivery over the respective EPEX spot market, that is definitely possible. Here, again, this is one for further reading later on. We have listed the different contract specifications as well. They replicate quite closely the system price, as I mentioned, in terms of contracts and lot sizes and settlement times and so on. We do have, for the different zones, a difference in the maturities that we're offering. They are, I would say, tied mainly to the fundamentals of the local markets, or what the local markets need. So, for example, we have a very full suite of the day futures set up for Denmark, because that is required more than some of the other zones where they're not the case. But we'll see how it is in the development. If there is a market need for those changes in the future, then yeah, we are able to actually change the specifications and to introduce new maturities going forward. Okay, so if we move again to the next, yeah, I'll skip this slide first of all. We don't need to go through this one in more detail. Perhaps the next one, if possible. One change we did make under assessment from the market is a change to the benchmark specifications moving forward. Market participants told us in working committees in the past that it's actually important to actually list the delivery areas for the different contracts should specifications of the different zones change, and therefore it's important to list the different areas, and that you can see that in this slide. For example, that for each zone that corresponds to a different market area or geographical location where the delivery is focused. So that gives you a brief overview of the zonal contracts. Now we come to the more important part, which I'll hand over to my colleague Anders again. Anders is going to go through the actual offer and incentives that we have for trading participants and what we are actually doing to push liquidity and build the market moving forward. So Anders, I'll pass back over to you. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, as I say, please put those in the chat. But first, Anders will go through the different incentives that we have.
Thank you very much, Tim. So first of all, I'll walk through all different incentives that we are gonna introduce later this year. There's actually 4 incentives in total, and I hope that these will find the interest for you guys. After that, I'll go through a couple more slides, but these ones are the most important. First of all, we are introducing a fee holiday. We've done this before, but we're doing it again in combination with these other incentives. So how this will work is that from September and 1 year out, there will be no trading fees trading the Nordic power markets at EEX. Next slide, please. The next incentives is basically an order book incentive scheme. So what we are offering the market here is for all initiated volumes that's being put in the market. So that's orders that you put in the market that is aggressed against you. We are going to incentivize these volumes by 21,500 euros per terawatt hour. And this is pro rata per gigawatt, meaning the incentive kicks in earlier than the terawatt hour. This will start from September and 1 year out. And what we are hoping to achieve with this incentive is that there will be a bit more competition in the market to put on prices on the actual screen. In combination with our market making offer, we hope that this will attract some more liquidity in the market and tighten the spread on the screen as well. And this incentives is a combination. It works for all the different products. It works for the zonal futures, it works for the system price and the EPAD replicators and the locational spreads. So that's the combined volume incentive that's initiated in these products that's is leading up to the incentive. Next slide, please. And as I said, we are also introducing a new market making scheme. We have introduced market making before without too much success. Reasons for that was obvious. There was no clarity in the market, and our market making scheme was probably not competitive enough. So we've tried to remedy that. So we are seeking market makers for basically all our different products. There's up to you what is interesting for you. It could be the system price you would like to market make. It could be the one of more of the zonal futures. Could be the replicator, meaning it's the spread between the system price and one of the zones, or it could be any of the other local spread combinations. So in combination with the 100% trading fee waiver, we are also offering stipends for quoting of up to 40,000 euros per market. And it's important to note here that this is per market. So if you're adding market making for, let's say, 2 different markets, it's up to 80,000 euros of stipends. So we hope that this could be quite interesting for you. And in combination with the order book incentives, these work in combination. So meaning if you're market making, you're basically also initiating. So the volume you are initiated or aggressed on your market making is also covered or incentivized, meaning you will basically get the 40,000 euros per market per month, up to, depending on how tight you market make, plus the 21,500 euros for initiating. And if you are interested in this, then please reach out to any of us, your account manager or any of us here, and we will walk you through how this will work. The next incentive we are introducing is an open interest incentive scheme. Basically, what this is we are incentivizing trade registration volumes with us. So we are basically offering for you to move volume from wherever you have volume today in the Nordic market to EEX and take advantage of a competitive payout of 46,500 euros per terawatt hour. This is single-sided for any broker transactions. This works in September and October. And then in November, December, we are reducing the compensation a little bit to 37,200 euros per terawatt hour. And we, of course, trying to make it a little bit more advantage in the beginning, also to help cluster the market a bit, so it's easier to find a counterparty. The way it works is you basically call your broker to find a counterpart, and then the broker will claim the deal at EEX, and then EEX will count your volume and pay you basically the money. So if you are if you are able to transfer 21 terawatt hours, the payout is roughly 1 million euros. There is a cap on this at exactly 1 million euros per member. So yeah, but that's also quite high volume, I think. The way to get access to these incentives, both the open interest incentive scheme and the order book incentive, it's basically reach out to us, reach out to your local key account manager, and we'll send you contracts for you to walk through. And it's quite easy. We basically just require your reply, the email, to sign up for the contract. We will then add you to our evaluation tools, and then you're basically set. Yeah. Next slide, please. I think Tim has already explained the capital efficiencies of trading EEX and clearing ECC. But what I would just like to pinpoint here is also the possibilities that we would like to offer you. On our ECC website, you can scroll down and find the different scanning range files for you to get a better view of how your margin will look like trading EEX. Another option we would like to offer you as well is that we can have a look at your portfolio together. We can do an analysis of what it would mean for you to either transfer or start trading Nordic zonal futures or Nordic power at EEX in combination with the rest of your portfolio. We are quite convinced that the majority of trading participants will see capital efficiencies, start trading Nordic power with EEX. Next slide, please. And just shortly, for existing members, it's quite straightforward. You already have access to Nordic Power if you're able to trade any of other power products at EEX. And for new members, there are two ways different to get access. Either you become a member of the exchange and have direct access. You do this by getting a clearing bank, as Tim already described, and then signing up for membership with EEX. Another way, which Tim also briefly mentioned, was an indirect access, where you're basically using the support of clearing bank, brokers, and other members to use their access to then trade EEX. Let's move on, please. And there are different ways of doing this. You can either trade on your own screen through the DMA provider, or you can use the trading screen of the access provider, or you don't even have a front end, but then let the access provider handle everything for you. You can read more on this on this link, and also who can support you in accessing the market. Next slide, please. That's basically it for us today. We have our colleague here, Agnes Stevens, from our communications team, and if there's any questions in the market, then we'll take them. I don't know if there is any questions, Agnes.
No questions at the moment.
No questions. So if there are questions, yeah, write them now. Otherwise, we would like to thank you very much for paying attention today. Anybody has a final remark, Tim?
Yeah, I've got a final remark from my side. I had a meeting just before, and the meeting with the client I had was requesting what are the actual steps we're taking to build the liquidity. So why do we think we can do that? Now, if any of you were at the different Montel conferences in the last couple of weeks, I think it was last week in Helsinki and the week before in Stockholm, we had the vibe in the market of discussing what needs to be done to actually improve the liquidity and bring it forward. And there was a lot of discussions around the fact that the TSOs should actually support the market of providing market making, up to that the government should actually cover the collateral requirements for the market to bring it forward. So we from the EEX were quite shocked actually from these requests, because generally they've been done in the past and don't work. And secondly, we've been able to grow respective markets where market participants have complained about liquidity levels without having to focus on TSOs and governmental initiatives. That for us, that will be the Hungarian market, the Spanish market, the Italian markets, the Japanese market, and so on. And what we can see in these markets is when markets have stagnating liquidity and not really moving forward, everybody's reliant on the order book of just the market makers in the book. If a market maker comes or goes, that determines if any trades actually occur. And a market which is growing needs to move away from just the market makers to a good number of companies actually initiating deals. The mentality of those companies changes from aggression to initiation once there's enough trust in the market and once there's a good stable level of market making which occurs. That's not the case right in the beginning. You do rely on the market makers quite a lot, but you need to move the mentality of the trading participants away from clicking on market making prices to starting to initiate trades themselves. And once that occurs, that usually occurs at about 40 plus trading members, which are active on a day-to-day basis. Only then do you start to attract the financial companies which come into the market. So they are the ones which have generally disappeared from trading that Nordic power market. You do not do that by forcing the TSOs to actually market make and relying on them to actually provide the liquidity. The liquidity has to come from the trading community itself and the trust to be able to initiate those deals. We can see that on the other end of the scale for our German power market, where we have a good number of market makers. but the top 50 companies in terms of liquidity initiate most of their deals compared to the smaller companies which aggress. And that is why we have put these different incentives in place, because we can see the different steps which are needed to actually grow that liquidity. We do need the basis market making, and we do need the incentives in place for companies to switch their mentality from waiting for a market making price to actually aggressing on the particular market. As I said, that's why we put that in place moving forward, because these are the required essential steps to grow the liquidity and to improve the number of trading participants and to make this market again attractive for the more international clients, which are required should you wish growth in the Nordic market again. And so we hope that the incentives that we put in place reflect this, and we are now going out to the market individually and discussing this on an individual level with the different market participants. Now, for the last year, it has been quite quiet. I know that from the EEX side, because of certain restrictions that we've had of being able to go out to the market, legal restrictions that we have which don't exist anymore. That is now hopefully that you notice that the EEX is a lot more active and vocal and a lot more presence in different conferences and individual meetings moving forward. And that'll be the case from now to the summer as preparation for our open interest build-up, I would say, which starts from September onwards. So if you wish to discuss that again in more detail, please drop us a line to any of the colleagues that you saw at the start of this presentation. We look forward to hearing from you and actually discussing growing the market segment of putting it back on the map. So Agnes, I don't think we have any other questions today at all, do we? No?
No more questions. No questions.
Okay, so we can finish here. And just to say, also on this slide, you can see the email address sales@eex.com. That will also bring you to the Nordic team. And secondly, we have a dedicated website area in place for Nordic trading, which you can have a look at by using this link here. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon. On behalf of Anders.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening in today, guys. Let us know if you have any questions on email afterwards. Yeah, so have a nice afternoon. Thank you very much, guys.